A single person, the former Secretary of State, failing to acknowledge the 4 American lives lost during the 2012 terrorist attack on a U.S. consulate in Benghazi. During an interview with Trish Regan last week, the mother of one of the Benghazi victims, Patricia Smith, said that Hillary Clinton lied to her about her son's death.
I want the government not to call me a liar, because that's incredible. I don't lie like that. She's a proven liar.
Joining us right now is former intelligence operator and Fox News correspondent Leah Gabrielle. Leah, good to see you. Thanks so much. Were you surprised when you heard Hillary last night say, look, we didn't lose a single person in Libya? That was pretty outrageous.
You know, I think it really makes it seem as though there's sort of a sensitivity chip that's missing there because, you know, 4 lives were lost, as you mentioned. There are mothers, there are daughters, there are children of these people who still want answers and still want accountability. At the same time, I think it's important not to take out of context what she was saying, and she was really talking about the military intervention. And I think, you know, what she was trying to say is that she was talking about Syria versus Libya, and the fact that a large-scale military operation took place there. It was essentially a clean operation in that U.S. people were not lost in that military intervention that ultimately resulted in regime change in Libya. And I think that's kind of the point that she was trying to make. But you cannot take that separate and apart from what happened less than a year later in Libya, which is when the first U.S. ambassador was killed in the line of duty since 1979. Right? And then 3 other Americans were lost, and still to this day we don't have answers on exactly why that happened.
Yeah. But Leah, I thought her comments were incredibly strange, considering just last week the president very vocally in the Atlantic criticized the British and the French for what happened in Libya. So I don't know if this is her way of sort of trying to salvage some of her reputation there, but the president himself is being incredibly critical of Libya and of our allies.
Well, he is in fact being critical of Libya and of our allies in the intervention and really the aftermath of what happened. I mean, when you look at Libya, you know, she said that Libya isn't perfect. Libya is far from perfect. You essentially have 2 competing governments in Libya trying to operate right now, and then you have ISIS controlling territory there along the coast, and we've seen beheading videos from ISIS take place in Libya. Libya is a mess right now. There's a power vacuum, and power vacuums are never good. They become hotbeds of terrorism. But at the same time, she does have a foreign policy background. She does have that experience. And when you've been the person in the arena, compared to some of these politicians who have never been in the arena, you're going to have to defend some of your decisions, and I think that's what she's doing right now.
But right now, it still looks like more of an albatross around her neck than a torch in her hand in terms of winning over voters and using this as something that she's running on. Instead, it's something she's trying to quietly rewrite what really happened.
Yes, well, she knows that every decision she's made is going to be up to be looked at in this political cycle. And as I was saying, she has a record compared to some candidates who don't really have a foreign policy record. But, you know, as you're putting it, this is not something that is going to be good for her going through this political cycle, and she knows it. Decisions that led to what happened in Benghazi, the whole email scandal, these are things that, of course, she wants them to go away because they're not good for her political future. At the same time, it wouldn't be fair to say that politicians don't use that experience to try to degrade her background and her experience level, and she knows it. She knows that some of these have become political issues, and she's trying to squash them as much as she can. At the same time, she has to be able to defend the decisions that she made. Some were good, some were bad.
Well, I think you make a good point that, you know, no other candidates have the foreign policy experience, because that's one thing that she could trade on in terms of being a positive. But then when you actually drill down on that experience, ISIS got stronger. We're talking about the situation in Libya.
Yeah.
You know, we've lost a lot of friends overseas. I mean, you know, I mean, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, they're all saying, is America still behind us?
The Israelis.
The Israelis. That's a great point. Thank you very much. Yeah,
and
you're right.
I think that's why, on days like today especially, it is so important for people to really listen to candidates and what they're saying, what the substance is behind what they're saying, how conversant they really are on these topics on foreign policy, because it's going to be important in the future. The next president needs to understand foreign policy, needs to understand the nuances of working with different countries around the world, building coalitions, and if they don't, we're going to have a problem. Some of these politicians, you can listen to them talk, you can listen to them when they're interviewed, you can hear how conversant they are. Some of them, there is no substance, and it's important for anyone going to the polls today or any other day to really pay attention to how conversant, what their real knowledge is.
You know, Leah,